Great. Good morning and welcome to this episode of Japan Expert Insights, Japan Expert Insights podcast with Dr. Joe Hug once again. Today is Wednesday. It is Wednesday, September the 18th, and we have the pleasure of once again being with you. All of us, Tim Sullivan, Dr. Joe Hug, and me, Maya Matsuoka. So you have already seen some of our episodes with Dr. Joe Hug, where we talk about the hidden champions of Japan. And I'm sure that you also remember that Dr. Hug is a polymath entrepreneur, angel investor, academic researcher, financial and business analyst. And if you are on LinkedIn, you have already seen many of his posts there about business. However, this is one of the episodes where we talk about the hidden champions of Japan, once again, the companies that have been here for over a century. And even though many people still believe that there is no change in business in Japan, these companies have managed to adapt and survive throughout different economic crises, political crises, and everything else. So, before we start though, I would like to introduce once again and say a big thank you to our sponsor, Kanchu.com, that offers bilingual services to individuals who want to buy and sell real estate in Tokyo and Yokohama. We have been working with them for quite a while, and one of the reasons we welcomed the idea of them being our sponsors is that Tim and I, we have known them once again for more than 2 years now. We have worked with them, we trust them, and we believe that they will provide services that will be tailored to your needs. So if you would like to connect with them, please reach out to James Howell at james@kanachu.com or reach out to him on LinkedIn so that you can work together. And with that, Joe, I would like to give you the stage and the screen, of course, because we're talking on screen right now. And let's dive in once again. Who are the next hidden champions that you're going to introduce to us, and what is so specific about them? Because we know that there is no secret sauce, right? But they are
Right.
here. Those companies are here. They have been here for quite a while. Yes.
Thank you, Maya, and thank you, Tim. As always, I worry whether the topic is interesting enough. So the
I'm
night before,
interested.
huh?
Maya and I are interested. That's all that matters.
That's all
Yes.
that matters.
That's all that matters. We do this for fun, and then we like this stuff. So
Yeah, well,
yeah,
me too. Me too. I find great interest in learning about these companies. As Maya said, what is it that keeps them alive for such a long time? And really, there's no secret, right? It's just plain old um, historical good practices that they share in common. Slightly different, these companies, but they all basically share the same common trends. And today is a little bit special because, of course, I'm going to bring to you two different companies than I previously had talked about. But there was a breaking story yesterday that Tupperware has filed for bankruptcy.
Mm,
Now,
wow.
Tupperware is, it's got quite a long history in America. It's
yeah.
famous. Probably almost every household has at least one Tupperware product.
And what? No matter the maker, everyone will call it Tupperware now because it's become a meaning rather than just the company name, right?
Right?
Like Xerox,
Yeah,
almost, or
yeah, yeah.
right?
It
Yeah,
describes the
Mhm.
genre of product, right?
right,
Yes.
right.
But
Of a
yeah,
strong brand. Yeah,
yeah, they made it to 80 years, which is no easy feat
yeah.
for any company. But they filed for bankruptcy. Now I haven't read into it much. I know part of it was competition and changing lifestyles of the customers, but um, that is the exact same landscape that these hidden champions are facing year after year. The
Mhm.
changing habits of their customers, the increased competition, shifting of economies, and of course, monetary exchange rates that as you know, recently have really put in a strain on Japanese companies.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Right.
so that's why I like to talk about them, because I like to really understand what keeps them going, and then what can we learn from that, especially for people who are maybe at the beginning and wanted to create their own company, startups, and or they have a company and want to keep it sustainable for many years. So I'm very passionate about this.
Yeah.
Yes. So it is always, I like that you use the expression keep it sustainable for many years, because we nowadays talk a lot about sustainability, and we usually envision or have in mind, the sustainability of climate,
Resources. Yeah, yeah.
resources and everything. But in order for business actually to survive, it really must be sustainable. And the sustainability in business means so many different things, right? It's of course resources. It is the supply chain. It is all the companies and partners that are situated along the supply chain, but also
And
the
their interconnections.
the
The
interconnected.
interconnections. Yeah.
And it is such a complex topic that many people don't really realize that sustainability is very difficult to achieve in business. So thank you
Yeah.
very much for talking about this. Tim, go ahead.
No,
Yes.
I just wanted to add one dimension because Maya and I, we were talking about this yesterday, just our private talk, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And there's this tendency, especially in the West, to quantify everything and to
Yeah.
measure everything and to draw from that data to draw conclusions. And to me, I'm looking at history repeat itself because I saw this happen in the 80s with the so-called, and it was hyperbolic to a degree, the Japanese miracle, but there was some truth to it as well. There were some really good things they were doing. And all these books and articles were writing about the Japanese miracle of the just-in-time system. And what people didn't give enough weight to, in my opinion, is the power of their culture. And there are things about Japanese culture that can be adapted with a focus on the word adapt. And there's things that cannot. And it's just, okay. And to say it in really simple, oversimplified terms, Drucker said that Western management concepts came from war and how to respond quickly in an emergency, top down, structured, and the image is a machine with interchangeable parts. Okay, if everybody does their part, we succeed. If you don't do it, we'll replace it with somebody else. That was kind of like the general mentality. Japan, in my opinion, evolved from rice paddies. And it's
Yeah.
based on these interconnections, these interdynamics, which is not efficient, but it can be extremely effective if you're looking over the long term.
Mm.
And it's inefficient from a human labor standpoint. But the rice paddies, they didn't care because they had a lot of people. That was their only resource they had a lot of. And they didn't have a lot of land. So they had to throw resources at it to survive and to yield as much as they could from their small acre, right? To sustain. To
Just-
me, if you go back and trace the roots, it's
mm.
all it's a very important dimension that is very difficult, if not impossible, to measure.
Mm.
Yeah.
Just kind of my observation as an old fart who kind of did this for
Yeah.
a while and observed differences, right?
Yeah. But also, Tim, if you don't mind me adding to that or building
Sure,
up upon
please,
this
please,
a little bit.
please.
And Joe, I'm sorry to interrupt you again, but the thing is that, the thing is that I also, what you said, people, well, the Japanese had a lot of human resources here, and that's what they didn't actually, what do you say that in English? Oshimanai. So they didn't hesitate to throw into work, right? All those people who were available here, they didn't hesitate to throw them into the farm work and everything. But at the same time, they also knew that without those people, nothing would be the same, and then work wouldn't continue. So
Nothing
the
works, nothing
right
happens. Yeah.
nothing happens. So what is fascinating to me, looking back at the history, of the Japanese society and how the communities survived as well, was that at the end of the day, they really took care for everybody. I mean, like they engaged everybody in
They
also.
value people.
Yes, in the decision making process as well, which
Yes.
was right. So it wasn't just, of course, it was top down, but even though it was top down, at the end of the day, everybody was engaged in that decision making process. So it
Yeah.
was, yes, to ensure that people were contributing and they were invested into the survival of the community as well.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. And just to kind of, they were top down, and so are Japanese companies in terms of policy deployment,
mhm,
right? General vision and direction, but it's still fuzzy. And
yeah,
they deploy that downward, and there is pressure, but the lower ranks now more intricately define the problem in more detail.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then they push it down, and the people, the managers and their people come up with ideas on how to rectify and solve those problems. Concrete. So the concrete ideas bubble up, but they're modified. And again, that's so inefficient, but they're pre-selling the action in the problem definition process by getting everybody's fingerprint on defining the problem.
Right.
mm,
And then when it's time to go, it took forever to get there, but when it's time to go, they leave Americans in the dust because they're so fast at implementing. It took forever to get there. And my friend used to say Americans are fast draw, slow bullet. He said the Japanese are slow draw, fast bullet. So that's kind of a good metaphor in my experience.
mm,
So,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah. No, I agree. I wrote a very very short article, and I got into a discussion, heated discussion, my which is my pattern, like one heated discussion per month.
so only so much we can take, right?
Yeah, that's right. But it's a heated discussion with a gentleman who was talking about the wonders of military leadership and how they apply to the business
mhm,
world. And I said, uh, yes, I understand and I agree that many of the military leadership qualities, vocabulary, ideas came from the military mindset. Uh, but they're difficult to implement within the business world because it, it's there's a difference between the military where it's life and death, a true life and
Yeah,
death, if
exactly.
if war were to break out, right?
yeah,
And in the business world where the worst that can come is you're going to get fired, no big,
Yeah,
you
right,
can
right.
wake up the next day. Anyways, we got into that long discussion about that, where he,
Yeah, no, and what's interesting is even the military has evolved to decentralize, especially with like special operations and stuff like that. Like even the military has shifted their, but I'm talking about original traditional top down.
right?
That's I think that's what Drucker's point was, and
Oh
of
no,
course you're right. It's been adapted for sure out of
yeah, yeah,
necessity. You
right.
can't do it now like that. It just doesn't work
No, it
well.
doesn't
Yeah,
work. Yeah, and
yeah,
Drucker was right. We do get a lot of the terminology from the military, a
mhm,
lot
yeah,
logistics,
yeah, yeah.
leadership, the word leadership itself,
Yeah, yeah,
strategy,
yeah. So,
beachhead. If you're talking
right.
about startups, um,
Yeah,
yeah. So, anyways, but as Maya also mentioned, and yourself, Tim, is that it's the matter of taking time, right? Having a long vision and from the get go, from the very beginning, and saying, look, we're going to have established the company, but we have this long term vision. And I think that's certainly something that I keep hearing from these hidden champions over and over is that they are not in it to be number one or to beat others or
yeah,
to reach the $1 million sales point and then get out. That's not what they're in for.
mhm, yeah. That's another great point, really, because what I have seen here, And my experience in Japan is not that deep. It's still limited, to certain fields. But also those companies, they always try to deliver their best,
Mm-hmm.
which means that they want to be better than they were yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And right?
Bingo.
Yeah,
Bingo. They're competing with themselves. And
Yeah.
that's what I learned working for Japanese companies.
yeah.
They have their eye on the customer because they
Hmm.
don't want to lose. But they're really saying we got to be better than we, just like you said, Maya, than we, and that's what you can control, right? So it's pretty smart when you think about it. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Maya. Sorry, I
Yeah,
just
there was a TikTok video of a guy recently. I don't know who he is or if he's famous or not, but he made this quick TikTok video. He talked about uh, having lived in Japan for a short time. He says it's the only place where he could see 50 different types of Coca-Cola throughout
yeah,
his life.
I saw that. I saw that. Yeah,
Yeah. He says like they're constantly improving,
yeah,
you know, and
yeah.
you better buy it when it's out because they're not going to sell it ever again.
Right.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right, 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 right. Sense of urgency. Got to try it. Yeah, yeah.
It's also fascinating to me because you say that, Tim, yes, that sense of urgency, but this is, I'm sorry to say this, and I think this is a very, very good marketing tactic, actually. This is the sense of urgency, the sense of scarcity that is artificially created so that people think that this is now. They want to lose out. The fear of losing out is now. So, because these are limited editions, and I think that's true about Coca Cola, but it's true with beer as well.
Oh
Have you
yeah,
seen all those?
I think it's true with food, seasonal.
Well, it's
snacks.
Every season and place. Oh, the Meimitsu of this place and this season. It's kind of like already in the culture, right?
Ye- Yes, yes.
Yep.
So it's
In-
like
Interesting.
they have brought it up, to a very different level as
Yeah,
compared to how Western companies actually work. But once again, even
yeah,
though, because I mentioned beer producers, right, and breweries and so on, even though it seems that they compete with other breweries, probably they do in the larger scheme of things. But at the end of the day, they also compete with what they pushed out yesterday, or
yeah,
maybe last month or last year.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
mm,
Yeah,
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So today I brought two completely different companies. Maya,
Nice.
if you could show us the slides. Yeah.
yes, here we
So the hidden champions,
Hidden champions.
the hidden
so the
champions,
first one, yeah,
because there are hidden champions all over the world. So uh, the first one I'm going to be talking about, and again, due to requests sometimes to not actually say the name of the company. Some
Right.
companies don't mind, some companies don't want it. So in this case, we're just going to call it Company A and Company B. But I
okay,
did put the logo. I did put the logo for any of you who want to go across the internet and maybe look them up. But uh, they specialize in swimming related products. That's how they started. Believe it or not, their first and only product for many years was what you see there on the two
Yeah.
children swimming
Swimming
was
cap.
the swimming cap.
Oh,
That's all they made
okay.
for many years, and they became really the leader in quality swimming caps. Now, some of you might say, "Well, what's the big deal of a swimming cap?" Well, you have children with all sides of heads,
yeah,
Ah,
and then you
yeah.
have some kids with allergies and other
hmm,
kids who have a lot of hair, little hair, etc. So you can't just make one standard cap and think it's going to fit everyone. And
No.
so they always listen to their customer and they would develop different versions of their caps. Um, Also, for competitive reasons, some athletes would come to them and say, I'd like to change the hat this way, and so they would listen to the customer and try it out. But now they're making bags and shoes, as you can see, special sheets for elderly,
hmm.
you know, for those elderly homes and elderly care.
You mean?
Company,
Oh, sorry,
yeah, no, that's
please.
okay. Let's go to Company B. Company B, they specialists specifically in stairs, but they also do other interior home products. But everything is related to wood,
Mm.
and hence Hiroshima. Hiroshima seems to be one of the centers of Japan where there's a lot of wood companies or companies that have their wood uh, departments or sections there
Mm-hmm.
in Hiroshima.
I
And
love the look.
yeah, so
Except
they don't.
they wouldn't pass code because they don't have a handrail, but that's okay. I don't need the in the U.S. I'm talking about the U.S. So
On the
it's okay.
U.S., yeah. Well, there's stairs that they make. Again, they listen to the customer, so they don't
Yeah,
have out of the box kind of.
right, right. It's all customized.
It's all customized. So they go
Gotcha.
in, you say, "This is my building. What would you think fits best to make it more appealing?"
Yeah,
So they'll go in and do all the measurements and
yeah,
calculations and stuff, and then
gotcha.
give them a few ideas, and then create the beautiful stairs. So
Yeah,
someday maybe you're
nice.
going into a restaurant or a nice hotel, and you're like, I wonder if this was one of the company's products,
Right.
I'll keep it
Yeah.
in mind.
because they have a large market share.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Again, they specialize in one thing and they're really good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's where, because they specialize in that one thing, they have specialized all their, once again, supply chain, right, and the partnerships they have, and everything. So at the end of the day, it is like that supply chain for them has become their competitive advantage, right? Because it has been so finely tuned to everything they do and to the products they produce at the end of that chain, that nobody can copy it. They cannot, other companies cannot really work in that direction. So I believe that's probably one of the reasons why they are a market leader here, and they do not have competition in what they do.
Right, right, and great feedback, right, from the customers as well, that
Yeah.
happy with these long-lasting, beautiful stairs
Mm-hmm.
that are not just something cheap that's going to fall apart or whatnot.
So,
Yeah.
Joe, I got a question. Do you know if they outsource the carpenters who build this stuff, or are they in house?
They're all in-house.
Yeah.
Which, good, because I imagine if they outsourced it, they might have trouble finding people
Right.
now, right? So I figured, oh, if they're really long term, they brought at least a core group of people in house.
No, yeah,
Mhm.
they have it all in-house. Even, I mean,
Interesting. Interesting.
behind
That's
the building,
interesting.
they have the wood where the customers could come and visit and pick the type of wood that they like. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
a very nice setup. And again, these hidden champions are not big. They're not like
Right.
multinationals with lots of buildings and such. They're not really that expansive, and that's the beauty of it. I think is that.
Yeah.
I have another question, like from a management point of view.
Mhm.
So let's start with the USA. What I would typically think would happen if a US company tried to do this. Like, let's say they brought in carpenters, but those carpenters are all union, right?
Yeah,
So those carpenters would only do carpentry, right?
right,
I imagine in Japan, those carpenters are probably doing a lot of other stuff in house,
right.
Mm.
wear
Yeah.
many hats, as is typical with Japanese generalists, right? Does
Right.
that ring true, or do you not know, or how are they set up that way? Is
I mean, there's a clear distinction between the office staff. When you walk into their building and you see the office workers, the way they dress, they're clearly office workers. But then the blue collar, if you will, right? The blue
Yeah,
collar are also distinctly different, the way they dress and the
sure.
area they work out of. However, um, the supervisors or leaders of the blue collar staff also dress like them. So
Right. The Gemba
they
people.
identify, they self identify with the group and don't
Sure.
separate themselves. So your manager, your leader, your supervisor will be just like you.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. He'll get his hands dirty, I'm guessing.
Right.
Hmm.
And he or she will
Yeah.
be in the mix, right?
Yeah.
Out there doing the things
Yeah.
that you're doing.
So
Yes.
you said he or she, is there more women in this workforce than you've seen in the past, or is it
Definitely. Yeah,
still?
definitely. In Hidden Champions, I'm beginning to see, and in fact, if I'm invited again, two of the most recent companies we went to visit, the presidents were females.
Wow,
In
how
Osaka,
about that? Yeah.
and that really threw me off because I think in we haven't interviewed a female CEO thus far, and these are the first two.
Hmm.
Nice.
Well,
I
Uh,
that's
love it. That's Japan's hidden treasure. It's
yes.
like it's Japan's hidden resource, underutilized resource. So I know so many fantastic Japanese women here who really
hmm
are good. So that makes me happy to hear that. Good.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I was happy. I was like, "Oh, wow!" Cool. And it was like one right after the other. So unexpected. Usually, we have been interviewing male CEOs, but yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Yes.
Hey,
Maya,
that was a 2-minute warning for our halftime plug for our highly valued sponsor and friends. So, Maya, I'll throw it to you, my
yes,
friend.
me too.
Okay. Thank you so very much, and thank you for the time, and the reminder as well. Well, again, I would like to say thank you for being our sponsor and our friend and also partner to Hana Urushisawa Howell and Houze Inc. So Houze Inc. is another company that is based in Yokohama and offers bilingual services in English and Japanese to people who have ideas of projects in custom home design, also in construction and renovations and commercial building construction. If you want to benefit from their services, from the customization and the excellence of what they do, please contact Hana Urushizawa Howell on LinkedIn or just find her contact details in the description of the YouTube video. So you are not going to regret it. We can tell you that for sure. So thank you very much, Joe, for the time. Tim, thanks for the reminder as well. And
Yep.
let's continue. So, Joe, I had a question to you, and I still have it actually, about, once again, the management of these two companies. In one of our previous podcasts, you mentioned that in these hidden champions, it's very often the case that the hierarchy is a kind of flattened. Of course, there is some structure there, but it's not as steep, let's say, or as layered, strictly layered as it is in larger corporations. So, do you see the same thing in these two companies that you're presenting to us today?
Yes, very,
Mm-hmm.
very flat, both and both. Uh,
Right.
there's the president, and then there's the probably like a general manager sort of, and then there's team leaders, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite flat. There's no CEO, CFO, CTO. There's none of that.
Right.
Those kinds of services are for the most part outsourced. Like if they have needs for internet security and things like that, those services are outsourced. They don't.
Mm-hmm.
That's not their specialty, so they don't get into
Right.
that.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, very very flat, Maya. Which is nice for me
Mm-hmm.
because when we reach out to them, um, it's very easy to be able to interview the CEO or president. In,
Right.
in a larger corporation, that would be impossible. Uh,
Even in Japan.
Even in Japan, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the hidden
Um,
champions we interviewed early on
Yeah.
fell within the parameters of what I had uh, previously described as a hidden champion, but they were so big, and that's why I'm trying to move away from that size uh,
If you're
definition.
big, you're not so hidden anymore. It's hard to hide when you're big.
And if you get a name, like everybody knows them, like you'll be like,
Right.
oh, yeah,
Right.
I know them.
So the
There's
unhidden champion, that's what we'll call
Mhm.
it.
right,
Yeah.
unhidden, yeah.
Right.
They were so big that we couldn't interview the CEO.
Gotcha.
We just couldn't get that far up. I think we got as far up as the general manager in charge of international operations or something like that. Even
Mhm.
the we couldn't meet. So it was a little bit sad. It was the only time that we couldn't get that high up. But normally we like to interview the CEOs because they are the ones that have the long term vision. So we could hear it from them, right?
Mm.
But if you
Yeah.
get somebody else, you're probably going to get a one of those PR responses.
Yeah. Right. Right. Right.
It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Boilerplate, you know.
Yeah, the boy. Yeah,
Yeah. I
Mhm.
mean,
things are great.
it makes sense that the smaller Japanese company would probably be a little more laid back within the organization and, less formal. I even see that the difference between Toyota and Honda. Toyota is much stricter than Honda is. Honda's kind of laid back. Just the cultures of those organizations are different.
Yeah.
And so I get what you're saying, like these flat organizations, not knowing the details of your area, the hidden champions. Based on my experience, and I always interject the culture angle, apologies, but so I would observe an on paper organization chart that spells out the hierarchy, but rarely did the reality match that chart. And people were going laterally to people above them in other departments to, you know, it, so it was much messier than that organization chart could portray it. And so it was almost like there was the Tatemae organization chart, and then there was the Hone hierarchy,
Mm.
unspoken, but there's this undertow of, okay, he's been here longer, we're the same rank, but I'm going to show deference out of respect. Or, there's a lot of that going on, right? So
Yeah.
I wonder if there's any element of that, or is just the fact that they're smaller companies kind of gets rid of that difference, that dichotomy, or
Yeah, that's a
blurs
great
it
question.
maybe.
Um, I think last time I was here, I mentioned the fact that you're so important as an individual. You're so important to the
You did.
organization that you're respected for your opinion. So
Okay, good, good, good,
that's
good.
I think that's where it falls into is like,
Nice,
yay, yes, you're not a manager, but you are the expert, and we need your input, right? Or
nice.
we,
I like that. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. And
Which,
one.
doesn't surprise me because even the Japanese would go to the line and ask the line worker, hey, you're the expert of making this part. Can you tell me what the problem is? So that mentality was there. So go ahead,
Yeah.
Maya. Sorry, I didn't mean to
Oh, no, no. I just
cut you
wanted
off.
to say that once again we go back, to that culture, the rice paddy culture of asking everybody's opinion, and getting,
Valuing it.
yes,
Yeah.
valuing it, getting them involved in the whole process. But also, I also wanted to ask you, Joe, about what are the common things, the points that you think are present in these two companies you're
no,
talking
thank you.
about today.
Great. Let's dive into the slides then.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good, 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 good.
Great question. So what I did was I of course I wanted to show you that they're two completely different kinds of companies and different products, right? But I
Yeah.
also wanted you to see how they might compare or contrast with each other. Can we go to the next slide then? And
Yes.
so let's look at, for example, the niche market.
Mm-hmm.
Both exemplify what a hidden champion really is, right? They have a niche specialization. So company A specializes obviously in swimwear, B more in home interior, but specifically in stairs. So very hidden champion, no problem there, right? especially
Yeah.
with the niche dominance. Um, let's go to the next slide. On the
Okay.
next slide, again, this is what really makes them hidden champions is that they're either 100 years already or they're nearing 100, and in this case both are nearing 100.
Mm-hmm.
um, and and they've not really changed much of what they do, so
Huh.
they've stayed the course, right?
Yeah.
Right.
What we're going to do, this is what we're going to be good at, which is different than, I guess, Western companies. Let's say, for example, just for fun, I'm going to pick on Facebook. But Facebook was this social platform where people could go
Mm-hmm.
in and share stories and pictures and whatnot, and that's what it was. It was good at it. It's still good, I guess. I don't use Facebook much, but uh, not now they're diving into other things. They've tried to go into video platform. They've gone into uh, kind of VR AR world.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Recently, I think some sort of AI chat and kind of a chat GPT alternative.
Yeah.
And they're continuously looking to either purchase a know-how or
Mm-hmm.
create their own know-how within with their
Yeah.
engineers. So I think in about 20 years, if it's still alive, it's not going to be what it was when it first
Right.
started. It's
Yeah.
just going to be a different creature.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Where if we were to in 20 years go back to these two companies, I I can probably guarantee that they're going to be doing the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 Yes. And they still will be the leaders in their niche
Yes,
markets, right?
yes,
And it's to me, it's amazing, and this I think this is the national character. They go so deep into stuff. Their improvements are so subtle sometimes. And the best example, and this I can't remember, it was about 5 years ago, maybe more. I saw this. It was a show, and they were talking about this company that made ramen noodles. Okay, and you would think there's a limit to how you can design your ramen noodles, right? I mean, you think they're like in my mind as the silly American, I'm like, okay, noodle's a noodle. They were going deep and saying, how do we design this noodle so it splatters less when people slurp it,
uh-huh, uh-huh.
right? And I feel like that's a metaphor for companies like this that just really refine their processes and their products on levels that are almost indiscernible to a lot of people, and yet they love the product. Does that kind of ring true?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. They're just continuously searching to improve. Yeah,
Yeah. To me, what you just said, Tim, made me remember. So the teapot that we're using at home now,
Yeah,
whatever you do when you pour tea into it never, I mean, the water never slips outside of the teapot, right? So the moment you tip the teapot, it pours into your cup, and then the moment you straighten it up, so there is even not a drop going down on the outer side, of
yeah.
the teapot.
Design. Yeah,
The
yeah,
design, yes, and it is such a small thing, but it is, I mean, it is, I think, presumably small thing, but for me it's a big thing because it doesn't actually stain that caster. Is that the caster what you say? So I use, casters for the teapot because it's too hot and so on and so not to damage the surface it is on, and so it doesn't stain it, and I'm so happy I don't have to worry about those
right, right, right. Yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah,
tea stains there. And everybody would say, or many people would say, just a stain, so what? But for
yeah,
people like me, it's a big thing, and I'm so happy to have that teapot.
yeah.
yeah.
And
And
yeah,
you can, and you would be more than willing to purchase a similar product or a different product from that company because of that quality.
exactly,
Yes, so
exactly.
yeah, we have been having these teapots because they're made of glass, heat resistant or glass. And then when it breaks, because inevitably sometimes you drop it, it breaks, and so on and so on, we go and buy exactly the same thing. And this
Yeah.
has been the case for 20 years now. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And same with heating up your water for your tea.
mhm,
So I forget which company, but I heard somebody talking about it, and what they their problem was, a lot of the population now in Japan is elderly. They love tea. They put the tea on, turn it on, forget, and then it causes fires or safety hazards. So they made a pot just for those people, the elderly, that switches off automatically. It's in a maho bean, right? And it holds your hot water for a very long time. So they
yeah,
solved a safety issue, but they also made it more efficient for them. Like,
yes, yeah.
again, it's simple, but it's brilliant. So, but go ahead, Joe. We interrupted you again. Let's continue
No,
on.
no,
Back on, back on topic.
back on topic. Okay, so we've looked at the niche market dominance. They're not always, the biggest market shareholder, but they do have significant market share.
Right.
We now at long-term orientation. Some are coming up to almost 100 years, like these two companies, and others are beyond 100 years. So these are qualities that they share no matter what type of product they're making, right? The next slide is on centric innovation. Now, what does that mean is that um, in order to have this long term vision in life, they constantly ask for feedback from their customers.
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing right? What could we do better? What have you seen that you would like for us to consider? So they're always getting this feedback from their customers, right? Uh, so company A, which is the swimwear, uh, they were getting feedback from children who would say, "Well, I have a cap, um, and after I go swimming, it's wet, and I have to carry this in my bag. It makes my books wet. It makes my desk wet, etc." So the company listened to the parents and to the children, and developed a different, their own type of material that they make, and they patented it, where now
Oh,
the cap can dry much faster,
nice.
Mm.
and also created like a holding bag for the bag, so that the children can just put
Nice.
it in there and it doesn't
Oh,
make
yeah,
anything
yeah.
wet. So these little things that they're listening to the customer, right? Where other big companies are, they don't care. They're just, okay, we're selling caps. Good, let's sell some more.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Scale it. Scale, baby, scale.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And
Ah,
their hats, their swimming hats, became so beloved by everyone that children who grew up would then turn around and purchase it for their children
mm.
when they had children, right?
Yeah,
So now you have customer loyalty throughout generations.
right.
And then one of those children grew up, and she became a swimmer for the Olympics. And she remembered her hat, went back to the company and said, "Can I be featured as being sponsored by you and using your hats and all that?" And they said, "Yes, of course."
yeah, yeah,
So
Yes.
so hat, uh, they made a special hat for her. But then
yeah,
she said, "Do you happen to make swimwear?" And they said, "Well, we've thought about it, but we've never really done it." Boom, another opportunity. So it's logical, right? Swimming wear. Why not?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Start making swimwear, and their swimwear was the official swimwear for the Olympics,
How beautiful is that? But
yeah.
right?
Also, I think that because you also mentioned that corporations, large corporations, they do not really listen to too closely and too
Mm,
carefully to
Yeah,
customer feedback. And I think that with these hidden champions, actually, their small size is their advantage, because when you
yeah,
become too big, inevitably, the people who produce your products get so far away from the customers,
yep,
the
yep,
end customer,
for sure.
and then the distance just grows. And
Yeah,
then with the small hidden champions, because they're so small, that distance is very short. And of course they intentionally make it, make sure that they listen, they ask the customers, they get feedback. But I also think that it is really possible and much easier for them because of their small size.
yeah.
yeah. And their willingness to embrace negative information as valuable and
Yeah.
useful
Hmm.
to bringing them to a higher level. Like
Yeah.
it comes across as negative, but it really isn't. There's a positive end game that's in their mind, but you can't improve unless you acknowledge the deficiencies. So I think that's also important. The size in that, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
But also,
Um,
I wonder. Oh, sorry, just one more question, Joe.
mhm.
Because, Tim, as you said, those companies, I believe that they're very open to the negative feedback as well. And also, have you noticed, Joe, whether there is that, let's say, atmosphere in the company culture where even any negative feedback does not convey or does not what's that uh, transcribe into blaming people about this and that. What I want to say is that that atmosphere should be within the companies. Of course, the atmosphere, the culture should be one that actually facilitates the acceptance of negative ideas and working on them. So there must be psychological safety for everybody there within the company.
Yeah, there is, and I think that's what makes a difference between hidden champion and your regular
Run of
company
the
is that
mill.
in a hidden
Yeah,
champion they know each other so well. The bond is like a family almost, and they know each other. They know
right.
each other,
Exactly.
family members, birthdays, very deep personal
Yeah,
relationships.
Mhm.
yeah. They're
Which
knee deep in the rice paddy together. That's kind of
yeah,
how I see it.
the little village, right? Which is unusual
Yeah.
because Japanese are not known for that, right? They're more
Mhm.
like don't ask me too much. I'm not going to ask you too
Right,
much.
right, 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 right.
Leave me
Right.
alone.
Yeah.
um, but in these companies, no, they know each other very very well, um, and
Yeah.
so any any negative feedback from the customer or from each other is taken as a way to improve rather than I did something wrong.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
There's
what
no
can
mistakes. There are challenges.
right,
Yeah.
That's
exactly,
Toyota's verbiage. We don't call them mistakes or problems. We call them challenges. That's the
challenge.
mindset. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
If
Mhm.
we go to the next slide, um, yeah, both of them focus very much on high quality, right? Which is different than some large companies. Sometimes quality is not important; it's more about mass production or mass sales.
Right.
That's why, like people in America went crazy over companies like Walmart and Dollar Store and
Yeah.
such. But then they quickly found out that oh yeah, you get what you pay for.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That T-shirt was cheap, but it fell apart a year later. And my Japanese T-shirt lasted 20 years. Which is a better investment, right? Yeah,
Yes.
And that's a great example, Tim. Many people you fell in love with Uniqlo, and the reason was it lasted.
Yes.
yeah, yep, yeah, yeah.
You
I
know,
agree. So,
Yes. Well, that's always the case because, like, of course, Uniqlo is like that, and I mean, because we talk about that retail company, of course, many people try to position Uniqlo as a competitor to Zara, for example, or H&M. And at the end of the day, when you look at those companies, you understand that it's not really competition, because what Zara and H&M and companies like them, what they do is they actually are just fast fashion companies,
Hmm.
right? And we know that their garments, actually each garment is actually what's that, is created to last for maybe 6 or 7 washes or
Mm.
washings, right? And
Yeah.
then you go to the next one, you need to buy the next one. While Uniqlo is more like a lifestyle company
Hmm.
in
Yeah.
and it's not really fashion. It's something that you buy and it lasts you for years, even though it's reasonably
At a reasonable price.
costly.
And just another thing, I like the shopping. I hate shopping, but I like Uniqlo's shopping experience. And I don't even like shopping. There's something about the experience that I just like. I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we can see here that quality is always in the forefront, right?
Yeah.
No matter what,
They can't help it.
and at times it's to the point where it's quality over profit.
Yes. Yes. I agree. For sure. It's quality over product. But adding value is recognized. Like they understand that they're adding value too. So sometimes
Right.
they might price it a little more. Like Japanese T-shirts were more expensive than Walmart T-shirts, but amortized over 20 years, they're a lot cheaper. So there's some of that going on. But you're right. I agree that quality is takes precedence for sure.
Uh,
Yes.
on the next slide,
Yeah.
sorry. On the next slide, again, both companies share almost the same viewpoint when it comes to reskilling, upskilling, training, education of staff. They're constantly learning new things, new equipment, new techniques, uh, new materials that they have to use, and if they happen to have a new type of customer, what are the customer needs? So they're constantly learning. Again, this is something different than standard companies. In standard companies, you learn it. There's one way to do it. That's it, right? Uh,
Yeah.
the image of the Department of Motor Vehicles (DMV) in America pops to mind. Where you go there and you say, I want to do this and get my driver's license. They say, well, you can't. Well, why not? Because there's a rule.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Well,
Yeah, we always did it the other way. We can't do it this way. Yep. Bureaucracy,
but
inertia. Yeah.
yeah, but in these hidden champion companies, they're just constantly learning. I remember a long time ago. It's a funny story, really short. And my wife once asked me, because as you all know, I was in the military, and she asked me. She says, "Hey, what do you do every day? There's no war." And I
Oh, right.
told her, "We're constantly training. Like every
Preparing.
day
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
training." And
Yeah.
that's what keeps the military or any military in the world sharp,
Mhm.
is
Right.
that constant learning, constant moving, so
Reps.
that when the need comes, you're ready. And
Yeah.
Right.
these champions are almost the same, where they're just constantly learning. Some of them have built uh, like internal training areas,
Yeah.
almost like incubators, if you will,
Yeah.
Mhm.
where the staff will be working during the day, have half a day off, and the other half of the day is devoted to training, where they all come together and train. I may be able to bring some pictures of a company that has done that I can go and visit it and get some pictures so that you can see in the future what I mean.
Yeah.
That would be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they even set up like a bar, so once the training is done, uh, they they can enjoy talking to each other. Pretty cool.
Socialize after. Oh, nice.
Yeah, social
Nice.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the
Good.
company
Good.
knows that this is really important. Uh,
I
Yes.
love the last. I love the last. Yeah. Sentence. That's so true. I'm glad you put that in there.
Mhm.
Employees the most valuable asset. Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
not just a slogan. They really, really, really mean it. And I will say this: I'm not saying Japanese are altruistic about it. some of them are, but this is practical. They just understand the reality, how important their people are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, definitely.
I
Yeah.
wish more companies thought that way.
The next slide. This is this is we this is a topic we do talk about when we interview. A lot of times, the companies that we've talked to don't specifically answer the question because we ask them, "What are your plans for global expansion?" or "What are your feelings about foreign competitors?" et cetera, et cetera. So they don't. Interestingly enough, they rarely answer it directly. This question. Um, but they do mention things like exchange rate problems that are also related to transportation, logistics costs, uh, et cetera, et cetera. But like Maya said earlier, I think it was you who said they don't really focus, or maybe it was you, Tim, they don't focus on the competition. They know the competition is there, but they're not fixated on them.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, if the competitor comes into the marketplace, grabs a share of the market, maybe even becomes bigger, to them it's not that important as it is to keeping their current customers happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I saw the big Japanese companies with tons of resources go first to the U.S., but around the world. I was there. I was part of it, and they struggled too. But they had resources to throw at it, and they could cover up some of those struggles with sheer manpower and know-how. But they struggled, and so I imagine the smaller companies, they don't have those resources.
Right.
Mm.
But I started suspecting that the word globalization wasn't necessarily understood the same way
Mm.
between how the Japanese frame it in their minds
Yeah.
and non-Japanese people who have, maybe there's difference there too, but they kind of have this general view, right? Adapting to local culture and management and hiring locals. That, at least that was the image before, like becoming part of that culture and adapting. And the Japanese, I don't know if they saw that or really understood how to do it. And so even today, even the second, third tier companies still struggle. That's why I had work, because they struggled, right? So it makes perfect sense that these smaller companies would struggle. Now, back to what Maya said, though, maybe their smallness could be an advantage
Mm.
because adaptability
Mm.
maybe can happen faster, but you got to figure it out without all those resources of the
Mm.
Hondas and Toyotas. So
Right. Yeah.
interesting. But
Yeah,
someone needs to define globalize,
global,
I
right?
guess.
And it doesn't mean that they're domestic sales only.
Right,
They do have customers outside of Japan, but
right.
they didn't feel that they were global. They didn't
Yeah,
say, "Yeah, we are global." They didn't say that.
Mm.
And they didn't say, "We
right,
want to be global," which is
right.
interesting. Really
Maybe
Yeah.
they
interesting.
don't know. They just don't know. Yeah.
Right. Right.
um,
Um,
Interesting. Yeah.
the last slide, which really summarizes really nicely, is the importance of adaptability and resilience. They constantly adapt to what is going on in the marketplace and around the world, etc., with their customers as well. Um, so, if there is a need to diversify and go and create new products, they do, but it isn't something that they're prioritizing without feedback from their customer. So they're not going to say, "Okay, let's create something this week and then see if anybody likes it." It's not like that. They
Yeah.
they get the feedback and then they say, "What can we do address that pain point.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Uh,
Wow. Yeah.
I think in the startup world, this is the smart way of doing things, right? You
Yeah.
look for a pain point and then you create a solution.
Right.
Because if you do it backwards, no one's going to come to eat your ramen
Right.
if nobody wants it. So you got to make sure that there is a need, and then
Yeah.
you can address it. And
Yeah.
so that's how these companies are working: is they listen and then they create, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you said, Joe, this is the way forward because everything starts and ends with the customer. Because as the lifestyles change, so do the needs of the customers, right? And if you continue producing what you did 10 years ago in the same way, eventually you grow out of demand. I mean, your products
Yeah.
will not be in demand
But
anymore.
but I do love the focus on the customer, and I think this is an untrue story, but it's a really good metaphor about this dog food company, and the engineers got together, not the engineers, but the nutritionists got together and created the perfect nutritional meal for the dogs. And so they sold it to their masters, but when their masters gave it to the dogs didn't like the taste, so the dogs didn't eat it. and
Well,
and it's a powerful metaphor because it's no good how much you, the engineers, or thought of what the people need. If the dogs don't eat it, then you failed. That was kind of like the punchline of that
yeah,
story.
but maybe we get into a different area, the area of design thinking there, which Tim I know that has had other names before, this modern term.
But it's also related to looking at it from the customer point of view, and people forgot about the poor dog who had to eat it. You know,
No,
and
yeah, Tim, I think that maybe here it's a little bit different. I think because we need to also acknowledge the difference between the real user and the customer. Okay,
Mm.
yeah,
because in the dog food example, I think that the customers are the dog owners and they don't eat the food. The real users are the dogs, right?
right,
So
right.
maybe there are certain products where we do have to be very aware of that differentiation between the user and the customer. Like
And I
the
think you have to balance it. Is my point. Like you gotta sell it to the master because they're the ones with the money.
yes,
But
right.
if their dogs don't eat the food, they're not gonna come back for repeat business.
Hmm.
Is what
Yeah,
I'm saying. Yeah.
yeah,
But you're
yeah.
right. Both have to be. That's the point. Both have to be concerned. But we've run out of time,
Yes.
Ah,
and it was another diversion by Tim. Um, so thank you, Joe. And I
thank you.
know Maya has to close us out with a commercial, a
Yes.
Yes.
message from our valuable sponsors.
Just before I do that, I would like to read one comment which came in on LinkedIn from Hiroko-san, okay? And it's about pricing and how these companies, the hidden gems, they sometimes, have a little bit higher prices or somewhat higher prices, but those prices are actually about quality and, customization and everything. So Hiroko-san wrote, there is a saying in Japanese, yasukaro mazukaro, which means you get what you pay for. This
Yep.
phrase implies that if something is cheap, it might not be of good quality, but not always true in Japan. Quality is always important, and Japanese consumers never compromise. And then
Yeah,
Tim,
that's
yeah,
hilarious. I was gonna say it just reminds me of the other Japanese expression: "Nothing is more expensive than something you get for free." It's something like that. I
right.
forgot the Japanese. Yeah.
Yes. Well, sorry, I just wanted to read this one because I thought
Thank you,
that,
Hiroko-san.
yeah,
Thank
thank you very much. And she
you.
has joined us actually from her office, so thank you for
Oh
doing that
yeah,
as well.
oh yeah, we appreciate that.
Yeah, and thanks to everybody who stayed with us. Joe, first of all, a big thank you to you. And I am looking forward to our next podcast and the next
Absolutely.
introduction. You
I have
know,
some nice pictures.
yeah, that's wonderful. And yes, so this is, the time when we finish, when we close up the podcast. And of course, once again, we say thank you very much to our sponsors, Kanachu.com and Houze Inc., Kanagawa Chuo Jutaku KK, that is kanachu.com, where you can contact James Howell at kanachu.com once again. So they do buying and selling real estate in Tokyo and Yokohama, property management and investment property, while Houze Inc. focuses on custom home design and construction, renovations, and commercial building construction. So you can contact Hanako there, Hana Uroshizawa Howell. That's all
I'll
from.
take care of you. Yeah,
Yes,
thank you, everybody. This
thank
was
you very
great.
much. Thank you very much, and please be with us next time when we have Dr. Joe Hug again on the
Thank you,
podcast.
Joe.
Thank
Thank
you.